Good evening. Welcome to 45South tonight, Friday the 12th of September. My name's Helen Stead and I'll be your host for this evening. Front page of the Oamaru Mail, Council cuts proposed irrigation loan. A proposed loan by the Waitaki District Council to the North Otago Irrigation Company, NOIC, has been cut from 22 million to 17 million and will be considered at the Council's meeting on Wednesday. In July, NOIC asked Council for a rollover of the existing loan of $12.7 million to June the 30th, 2022, as well as an additional loan of $9.3 million, making a total of $22 million. The initial loan repayment date was January 2016. On August the 6th, Council agreed in principle to the request and said it would make a final decision after a period of negotiation with the company and public consultation. In the meantime, an application for information under the Official Information Act has been made into Council's dealing with NOIC regarding the loan. There needs to be public consultation before there is any extension of the loan, it points out. And the information required under this includes the status of the loan, evidence of financial transactions, details and evidence of the monitoring and accountability process protecting ratepayers' funds. The Council would have 4 weeks to reply, and if nothing was received by then, it would go to the Ombudsman. The staff report for Wednesday's meeting said Council would have to consider what action to take if the offer to NOIC was not taken up or accepted. The most potential reasons for this are that the subscriptions do not reach a level that existing shareholders would accept due to the increased risk they would have to accept, or that NOIC can make more favourable funding arrangements, the report stated. If the funding is not required, it is appropriate for Council to indicate that it wishes the arrangements to and on the current maturity date in January 2016, and that all outstanding amounts are to be paid in full on that date. And inside there is an opinion piece by Lindsay Malcolm, who is a former chairman of Network Waitaki and ABCO Meets, and it's headed Proposed Lending Approved Without Thorough Analysis. I wish to express my concern, this is Lindsay Malcolm speaking, at the reported Waitaki District Council decisions and deliberations of August 2014, when approval in principle for the lending to the North Otago Irrigation Company of a further $9.8 million of further development funding was given. This is on top of the original capital and unpaid interest totalling $12.7 million, both of which are due for repayment in January 2016. What is of greatest concern is the inadequate scrutiny with which Council is rushing headlong into providing additional funding with even as much as simple analysis of the existing commercial situation being tabled. I have no doubt if the outstanding borrowings and unpaid interest had been sourced from normal banking or lending channels, such lending institutions would have reacted long before now. What the NOIC board have allowed to happen equates to a breaking of its lending covenants with the Council. At worst, it would have produced a receivership, or at best a complete restructuring requiring a substantial injection of shareholder risk capital of more realistic proportions. Now, that's a very comprehensive and quite long. It takes up half a page, so I would suggest people, if would like to read more about it, definitely go and buy the Oamaru Mail. And on the back page, and for those who are the rugby fans, a win is crucial for North Otago. North Otago coach Mike Mullins answered Oamaru Mail sports reporter James Ford's questions ahead of the Old Goals clash with King Country at the Whitestone Contracting Stadium tomorrow. And he goes through virtually the state of the game, but I will only read the one. How important do you feel Saturday's fixture fixture is to North Otago's season. Simple. Win and we still have a chance to keep our Meads Cup aspirations alive for another week, just like last season. Well, we wish them all the very best. And that concludes the news, and after the break I'll be back with the weather and the program. Welcome back, and for the weather, Friday at 12 noon the temperature was 17 and the overnight low is expected to be 7. Tomorrow, Saturday the 13th, the high is expected to be just 12 and an overnight low of 3. And the forecast, rain clearing in the afternoon, then fine spells with light winds. Sunrise and sunset, sunrise 6:44 a.m. and sunset 6:21 p.m. The tides for Saturday, high tide 6:37 a.m. and 7:09 p.m. and the lows 12:24 a.m. and 12:51 p.m. And because it's the weekend, Sunday's weather, we can expect a high of 12 and a low of 5. The forecast for Sunday, mainly fine, northeast, chances of showers with change to southwest. Now then, for the program tonight, we have meeting Kay Garvin, natural therapist, and Kay is talking as well as much about Jin Shin Jutsu and reflexology. And the second is a short clip, the Tairi train arrives and visits Oamaru. So, in the meantime, over to the interview with Kay Garvin. Good evening. My guest today is Kay Garvin, and Kay is an exponent of reflexology and Jinshitsu. Welcome, Kay.
Well, thank you, Helen.
Have I pronounced Jinshin Jutsu correctly?
Yes, that's right. Some people call it JSJ. But
JSJ, we'll do it that way, yes.
Yeah, that might be easier.
Okay, but I mentioned reflexology first because people have talked about you and did I know about it and I should come and talk to you, so I'll get you in to talk about it here. So here we are now. We'll start with reflexology. Is that what you were interested in to begin with?
Yes, that's how it all sort of really started, was from reflexology 30 years ago.
Yes.
I went to see Val Parker, who used to come to Oamaru, and I was pregnant with my first child, and I wanted a healthy baby and a great pregnancy, and so I went to her and she introduced me to reflexology.
And what does it entail?
Well, basically you're working on the reflexes on the feet. This is 4,000 years old. It has a history of Chinese, Egyptian roots, basically, and so it's a very old therapy, and it doesn't only include the feet, although the common one is reflexology, but it can also be the hands, the face, and the ears. So
you manipulate different toes or do a kind of massage on the feet? Or?
Yes, they all relate to reflexes that relate to organs and glands in the body.
Yes.
And so by stimulating those, that is helping the body to harmonise. Dr. William Fitzgerald, he was an ear, nose and throat doctor back in 1915, discovered that if he used certain, he called them zones, certain zones on the feet, that he could perform minor operations without anaesthetic, by numbing the areas.
Well, that calls into thinking about the fact that anaesthesia is a more modern system of medicine for surgery. I mean, how did they get on in the past? Because that you're pointing to the fact it's 4,000 years old. So they must have had another system.
Well, according to Dr. William Fitzgerald, that's the system he rediscovered, if you like.
Yes.
And modern day reflexology was actually by a physiotherapist called Eunice Ingham
right.
in America, who as it is known today, reflexology. She developed this zone therapy, and yes.
And you found it helped with your pregnancy, and how do you compare? It's a bit like you can have 3 babies and your pregnancy will be different for each one. But did you feel that it helped you with aspects of your pregnancy at that time?
Well, absolutely. Personally, I had sinus at the time, and she told me about stimulating the pads of the toes to help for the sinus.
Right.
And so I would do this, at home, and like the floodgates would open and my nose would start running, and it was like, whoa, this is amazing. And then when I did go on to have the children, she would show me an area of the foot that related to the chest,
yes,
and I would massage that area and work that area.
Right.
And yeah, I've just used it ever since. I didn't actually train till 2007, but I've been using it all those years on the children and the family.
Where do you go for training, or do you do your own training essentially as an extramural student, lots of reading, or you talk with somebody else? Yeah,
no, I actually trained in Christchurch. Yeah, it was a sort of virtually a year-long course that I travelled up to.
Yes.
And yeah.
So, okay, and then you decided you'd be an exponent of it yourself, and that you, having learnt, or you then continued on to JSJ, Jinshin Jutsu.
Oh, some years later.
Some years later.
Yeah.
Right.
But the interesting thing about the feet is that you have 7,000 nerve endings at your feet, 26 bones, 33 joints, and 100 muscles, ligaments and tendons, and that's all just on one foot. So it's huge. Every step you take, 3 times your body weight passes through that foot.
Right.
And we often ignore the feet unless something goes wrong. And I mean, they've got to carry us through life, and we don't really pay them much attention. We spend a lot of money on our hair and makeup perhaps, but we ignore what it has to carry us through life, and yeah, I'm passionate about reflexology. Yeah.
Well, I've heard people say that you, exactly like you said, we spend money on our face and hair, and then people go and buy. Well, I'm trying to think of the woman in the Philippines, was it, who had hundreds of shoes, and we'll buy hundreds of shoes, but how often do we actually look after our feet and massage our feet? Yeah. So it's very difficult to, with television, we've got to use explanations, but should we move on to JSJ now then and talk about how much later that we're going to find you became interested in Jinshin Jutsu?
I had a friend who trained in this in Christchurch, and she was staying with me on her way back home. She lived in Wanaka, and she told me about it, and she said, okay, you so have to learn this. Yes. And I held my hands up and I said, no, I'm not learning any new things. I mean, you never say that, do you?
No.
But you had to pay in American dollars, and I thought, that's...
What do you mean, pay in American dollars?
Well, it was quite... the cost was... related
for the training.
I see. Yes. And it all seemed so expensive. And anyway, she told me that each of our fingers related to organs in our body, attitudes like worry, fear, anger, grief, and sadness, and body systems, surface skin, deep skin, muscle, and bones. And I was thinking, oh, okay, I've heard some weird things, but this is okay. And so the next day she went home, and I was working in the clinic, and basically, cut a long story short, I was doubled over with pains in my stomach, had no symptoms whatsoever, and I remembered her saying the thumb related to the stomach, and so I held my thumb, and the sounds that were coming from my body were never heard before, like gurgling and like drains clearing. I thought, this can't be because I was holding the thumb. And then 4 days later I got a headache, and I remember her saying the middle finger related to it was a harmonizer for the body, and so I held my finger, and with 4 minutes the headache was gone. But it wasn't till 4 months later I got a white-tailed spider bite, and my leg blew up like a balloon, and I couldn't put my heel on the ground. I basically couldn't walk. The pain was so intense. And I held this as a particular hold that we do in Jinshin Jitsu that will draw things out, whether it be poison, glass splinters, and I held this for 30 minutes, actually 40 minutes, and when I took my hand away it was like a teardrop, a clear liquid teardrop, And I found out later that they're actually not poisonous. It's the bacteria on the fangs of the spider that caused the problem. So, the rest is history. I just had to learn it after that.
Well, you see, you've gone from feet and now to hands, and you've
had a few things in between.
You had a few things, yes, I'm sure you did, as well as probably having some children in between.
Yeah, 2 children. Yes.
But you've brought in books here and diagrams of how there are, is it pressure points, the words you use around the body?
We call them safety energy locks.
Safety?
Yeah. Safety energy locks.
Safety energy locks.
We have 26 mirrored on either side of the body, so 52 in total.
And so they're approached, obviously, from a living person, from the front or the back.
Both. They live on the arms
and
as
the
well.
arms. But there are more associated with these hands in the fingers.
Yes, each of as I said before, each of the fingers related to organs in the body too, so we can harmonise ourselves. Jerome Arai, the man who rediscovered this in the early 1900s, was terminal.
Now he was
Japanese.
He was Japanese, yes.
And his father and his elder brother were medical doctors, and they were treating him and he wasn't responding. And eventually he was diagnosed as being terminal. And he, in the tradition at that time in Japan, it was honourable to go to a sacred place and wait for the process, for the death really. And so for him was a cabin they had in the woods, and they took him in on a stretcher, said their goodbyes, and said they'll come back in 8 days. And they really thought they were coming back to a corpse. And so there's a few stories going around, but basically he meditated and fasted during this time, and he got a vision of different finger holds, and he started doing this, and he started to feel lots of sensations in his body. And long and short of it is, on the 7th day he dropped to his knees, thanked the Creator, and said, "I'll devote the rest of my life to this work," and walked out on the 8th day. Fully cured. So that
the early 1900s. So that then, obviously, he taught lots of people, and it's now become.
Well, he actually only taught 3 people.
Is that right?
Yes. Mary Burmeister, she was a first generation Japanese American lady, who was in America, and during the war, of course, she got a hard time for being Japanese. So she went back to her native country until after the war, and the story goes, Jerome Arai came up to her and said, "I have a gift to give you to take back to the West." And it was the gift of Jinsen Jitsu, to learn the gift of Jinsen Jitsu. So he taught her father, and a Dr. Kato in Japan who just died last year. So he only taught 3 people, but thanks to Mary, we now have lots of instructors throughout the world.
Well, I'm fascinated that you make the point, of course, that the war, whereby the West and Japan were on obviously different sides, so the philosophical or medical breakthroughs would have a difficult road to be exchanged in a positive sense. Although we should digress, I suppose, slightly in that the nuclear bomb, the exchange of the information was used by one against the other, and yet was found by the 2 different sides. That's the irony, I suppose. But coming back to the fact, you then practice it and offer it essentially as a, what do you call it? It's a medical experience, service. What do you call it?
Well, basically it's to harmonise the body.
Yes.
It's all about harmonising the body and we're not fixing anything.
No.
We're just harmonising and moving energy, and either taking energy away from congested areas or giving areas energy. Yeah, so we use these safety energy locks to do that, to give a treatment. Right. But we really decide on a treatment based on the pulses. We listen to the pulses of the body. There's 12 pulses we listen to.
So those 12 pulses, do you name them?
Yeah, well, they relate to all of the organs.
Yes.
Yeah, basically.
So on these diagrams we've got here, if we do the ones of the body, we'll do a cutaway such that while we're talking, these will come over the top of what we're saying. So we'll show those, but at the same time, name those 12.
Well, the stomach and the spleen.
Yes.
Yeah, this is stomach and the spleen. This is only through the pulses. These aren't in terms of safety energy locks on the body. This is just to tell us where to go to give a treatment.
Right.
So there's stomach and spleen, lung and large intestine, liver and gallbladder, kidney and bladder, diaphragm and umbilicus. And what have I missed out?
Well, how do you deal with all the limbs then, and the brain itself? Or?
Well, they all relate to different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then again, we'll have a diagram of the thumb and the fingers. So name the 5 for your digits.
Self-help. Yeah. Well, holding the thumb is relating to stomach and spleen. Babies suck their thumb, really,
they do, don't they?
Helping themselves, as you saw in the video before. So the thumb relates to stomach and spleen. It's surface skin, and it's the attitude of worry when we worry about things.
Oh, right.
So just by holding your thumb, you can harmonise those areas. Yes. The index finger is kidney and bladder, and that is perfect circulation. It's your muscular system. And it's the attitude of fear when we're fearful in life. The middle finger is liver and gallbladder, and it's the blood in our body, and it's the attitude of frustration and anger. And it's no surprise what finger people hold up when they are angry. It's the middle finger.
Thought about that. You're right.
Wouldn't be quite the same as they hold up their little finger.
No. Yes.
And the ring finger is lung and large intestine. Yes. And that is deep skin in the bodies, and the attitude is sadness and grief. And the little finger is heart and small intestine, and it's your skeletal system. And the attitude is efforting or trying too hard in life. You know, rushing woman's or men's syndrome.
Well, I was also thinking of the way in which there seemed to be a fashion at one time, for drinking tea. And your little finger
trying too hard.
It's trying too hard to look something that maybe you're not.
Yeah, pretense. They call it pretense. Is another thing.
Isn't that right? Isn't that interesting? I've never heard of that.
The other thing about the hands is that we all, or the attitudes, we all have those attitudes, don't we, from time to time?
Yes.
You know, when we're anxious or whatever. But the theory with Jinsen Jitsu is that if we hold them for too long, if we've got, say, grief and sadness for too long, that will deplete the energy in the lung or the large intestine. So it's another way of looking at when we have and we call them projects in Jinsen Jitsu, not problems. Problems is not very creative, whereas a project is a creative. Yes. What can I do for someone's project, and what can I teach them to do for their project?
Now, I've just been thinking in that, where does the thumb go back to? What the thumb is
stomach
again?
And spleen.
Stomach and spleen. And how do we relate that? For example, when we spoke before about the middle finger or the use of the little finger, for the thumb, we talk about thumbs up in a positive way.
Yes.
So stomach and spleen, like you may say to people, he or she hasn't got the stomach for it, or they've got no guts, being blunt.
Right.
No backbone or other things like that. Is there a relationship then between our intellectual and language with the bodily parts and functions? Yeah,
you might say that about someone, but that's your perspective on that person.
Right.
At the bottom line, it always comes back to us.
To the individual. Yes. Very interesting. Well, I'm holding these books here too that you lent me some books, and I don't say I've diligently read them all through, but I've taken little bits. This, a touching goodbye, the gentle use of Jinshin Jutsu at times of critical illness and death. And I found it really interesting because, and quite often people were dying, but it brought a level of peacefulness to the people as they were dying, or to the people who were with the people who were dying. It has got a communication factor associated with it. I may not be using the right language, but I felt there was a simplicity and peacefulness about the thought processes that all went with using these, the touches.
Absolutely. In Jinsen Jitsu, it's about honouring that process.
Yes.
And if it's time to go, just wanting it to be peaceful. I lost both parents through strokes, and I wished I'd known about this before then. They were both in comas, and we did a 24-hour vigil around both times for my parents. I wished we'd known about something to actually, we were holding their hands, but we could have done specific things to help. I mean, not that we're making them go quicker. No. But it was just to help the process.
The peacefulness of it.
A bit of their time.
Yes. I thought they used the examples here we have a problem talking about the language. Because you want to draw diagrams and say, but we're back to the baby that holds their thumb in their mouth. Yeah. And when somebody's ill or dying, you say, my heart goes out to you, and you also want to hold their hands or just touch them.
Yes.
And you can feel that they have reacted back to you and that gives both the person who has the condition as well as the person who feels for the position. And you see, we've used another word like feels for their heartache or their disease or their
process.
Yes, their process
that they're going through.
Yes. But that and this other one, Wellness Above the Clouds, where it had the unique guide. Well, it says complete harmony of body, mind and spirit, but it's got the diagrams of a person who shows what you're holding and what it relates to your state of body or happiness or harmony at the time. I thought both those were very interesting.
Very. The photos are really wonderful in that, and it gives a very clear sort of guidance, doesn't it?
Yes.
As to what to do to harmonise. That was written specifically for people who are having trouble with flying, whether it be anxiousness or jet lag.
Right.
Went to America last year to do some more training in this, and I never had jet lag there or back.
Is that right?
I followed this.
We've gone quite a long way through the interview, but we should finish with the fact that you have been in your career, your business, if you like, is now in reflexology and JSJ. How long have you been doing it for? Since
I've only formally changed in reflexology since 2007, but prior to that I did Bowen therapy.
Right.
And I do foot joint mobilisation and a number of other things. But Jinsen Jitsu, I'm actually a qualified practitioner in this, and I'm also I can teach self-help workshops, which I do to teach people. My passion is teaching self-help. It always has been.
Yes.
And basically I'm qualified to actually teach this for people for self-help.
I recall, was it back at the beginning you talked about somebody who was doing teaching reflexology, who was a physiotherapist, was it?
Oh no, she was the physiotherapist was the lady who rediscovered it in the 1930s about reflexology.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm just wondering, do you have a medical, have you been a physio, have you had a medical background?
No, it's just my interest in this has just started basically with wanting to treat my children naturally.
Yes.
And I ran a natural remedy support group for 9 years when my children were little.
Right.
And we used to get speakers from all over New Zealand really to talk to us and teach us how to look after ourselves naturally, and it's just been an extension of that really.
Right.
But as I said, I've always taught self-help, but the Jinsen Jitsu has put it on a whole new level, and that's why I trained so I could do workshops.
Right. So you do those, once a month or just on demand?
Oh, whenever. Yeah, I'm doing a couple more in October.
Right, right. But thank you very much for coming in. And
thank you for having me.
And you obviously enjoy what you're doing, so keep enjoying.
Oh, thank you. I do.
$600. It's good. They asked for Brazil. No worries.
There's sunshine there.
Yep.
Does it see rain here on sometimes Friday night, really Saturday night, or Saturday night?
Yeah, we had rain late Friday night here, drizzly rain. But Saturday was beautiful, this.
Fantastic. Good on.
Who's on the station?
What are they going to do?
Don't
Well, look, welcome to Oamaru, and I joined the train tonight in Palmerston on the way up, and it was an absolutely spectacular ride. Beautiful countryside, beautiful weather. Now, Councillor Mel Cavendale would like to say a few words to welcome you all.
Welcome. We've got a beautiful day on here. We would have loved to have been here, but you've got to have meetings here on train. Absolutely stunning out there. We've got some buses taking people down to the historic precinct. Have a look around. You'll have a great day. We hope you really enjoy yourself. So welcome to Oamaru.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Not all of our council are as good looking as that. Thank you, and have a wonderful time. There are buses outside, but if you do walk across the road, up Ribble Street and down Thames Highway. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
I don't mind people opening the last any problem with putting the water in the streets? I don't mind people opening the last any problem with putting the water in the streets? what you do to me. 1,000 miles is pretty far, but there's a place in strange cigars that walk to you, but there's no other way. Our friends will all make fun of us, so we'll just laugh along because we know there's none of them that felt this way. Delilah, I can promise you that by the time that we get through, the world will never ever be the same, and you're to blame. Hey there, Delilah, you be good and don't you miss me. 2 more years and you'll be done with school, and I'll be making history like I do. You know it's all because of you. We can do whatever we want to. Hey there, Delilah, here's to you. There's one for you. Oh, it's what you do to me. Oh, what you do to me. Oh, it's what you do to me. Oh, it's what you do to me. What you do to me.
Welcome back. I trust you enjoyed both those programs. I forgot to mention that we don't have a clip for Sunday, but obviously our loop is still running, and Josh, or someone here, has updated it, so there could be some new clips that you haven't seen for a while, so maybe go back to that. In the meantime, keep in touch down here at 17 Etchin Street, or leave a message on our cell phone. That's 027 45 South, 027 45 76 884, or leave a message on, or send us an email, south45tv@yahoo.co.nz, and we will see you again on Monday. Have a lovely weekend. Good night.